So in this lecture, we're going to look at the body membranes, and we've talked a little bit about serous membranes already back in chapter 1. And this will give us a chance to sort of, to try to understand exactly what a serous membrane is, and then what some of the other body membranes are as well. So we've used that term membrane now in multiple ways. We've used it to talk about the lipid bilayer that forms the boundary around a cell. That's the plasma membrane. We've talked about basement membranes. That's that layer that we find that separates epithelial tissue from the underlying connective tissue. That non-living layer just primarily built of protein fibers that help to support and to give flexibility to an epithelial surface. Now we're going to talk about epithelial membranes. That's what this section is about. Epithelial membranes are a continuous sheet of cells, either a simple epithelium or a stratified epithelium, that's composed of this epithelial layer, and then the underlying connective tissue that supports it. So that's what an epithelial membrane is. And serous membranes are one kind of epithelial membrane. It's the serous membranes, as we have already talked about, line the ventral body cavities. We talk about them as the parietal membranes, and cover the organs that are found inside those cavities. That's what we talk about as the visceral membrane. So we talked, if you recall, about the heart, the visceral and parietal pericardium, and the lungs, the visceral and parietal pleura, and in the abdominopelvic cavity, the visceral and parietal peritoneum. And their function is to secrete a thin, watery serous fluid with some enzymes in it that help to, if you recall, lubricate the movement of the organ within the body cavity. They also have a suspensory, in some serous membranes we see that they suspend or hold organs in place. And that not only are they secreting fluid, but they're also absorbing fluid as well, so that we can prevent the accumulation of excess fluid. So how are they built? Well, serous membranes are built of a simple squamous epithelium. So we see that right here. The basement membrane is right underneath that area. So there's the basement membrane, and here's the underlying connective tissue. And you know that this is a simple squamous epithelium because the cells are flatter than they are wide, and the nuclei wind up being kind of squished in the cells because they're so flat. The connective tissue underneath is areolar tissue. It's a loose connective tissue, and it has and has the capacity then to also become fat. And so, especially in the peritoneal serous membranes, that's where we put on belly fat when it's that belly fat that's inside deep to the muscle. That's the belly fat, that hard fat that we can get inside in the abdominopelvic cavity. All right, so simple squamous epithelium with cells that will secrete a serous fluid into the cavity and will also absorb excess fluid back into the body. Mucous membranes are also an epithelial membrane. And we see mucous membranes lining the cavities and tubes that open to the exterior. So our digestive system is lined with mucous membranes, as is our respiratory system, the urinary system, and the reproductive systems. And they're composed of a layer of loose connective tissue and one of 3 different kinds of epithelial tissues. So loose connective tissue here below, epithelial tissue above. And it may be a stratified squamous epithelium. That's what we find anywhere that there's going to be a lot of mechanical stress. So the oral cavity, the anal cavity, the vagina, These are all lined with a stratified squamous epithelium that has lots of layers and is very protective to the underlying tissues. Sometimes it's a, oops, dadgum, how did that happen? Sometimes it's a pseudostratified columnar epithelium. Remember, this is the one that is tall, columnar, and it has along the surface of it cilia there at the free surface of the tissue. And these are found in the nasal cavity and the trachea. So that's primarily in the respiratory openings that we find this pseudostratified columnar epithelium. And the cilia that can wave, and along with the mucus that is being produced by the goblet cells in there, we can, oh, here, let's look in closer because this is a pseudostratified epithelium. Let's see how big we can get it. The goblet cells are found here. These are, oh wait, you know what? We're closer than we normally are. I apologize. I got that wrong. This is all, come on. Let's see, make sure, yeah, okay. So this is all, no, still don't have it. Did that get, yeah, I think that got it, yes. So this is all the epithelial layers. These are the cilia up top. This is the columnar epithelium here, and these are goblet cells. So the goblet cells produce mucus that comes up to the surface, and the cilia wave and wave and wave, sending the mucus along the surface. So the basement membrane is here, and then the connective tissue down below. Yeah, I apologize for that confusion. So that's a pseudostratified columnar epithelium. And then it could also be just a simple columnar epithelium that we find in the small intestine, in the stomach as well, as a simple columnar epithelium. And there we have goblet cells that are busy secreting mucus as well. So one of three different mucus-producing layers that that line these cavities that open to the exterior of the body. And then the third kind of epithelial membrane is called the cutaneous membrane, and that's the skin. And it is composed of a stratified squamous epithelium, but the cells are keratinized here at the surface. So once they start getting up to kind of this layer, the cells are keratinized and they die. The membrane surface is relatively dry, or is dry and relatively waterproof. So we don't get moisture passing directly through in either direction. It's blocked here by all the keratin that is filling the cells up at the top layers of the cutaneous membrane. Underlying is a dense, irregular connective tissue. That's the dermis. Below the epidermis is the keratinized stratified squamous epithelium above. So those are the three epithelial membranes, but there's one other kind of body membrane. And rather than being composed of epithelium above or superficial and connective tissue below, the synovial membranes are actually composed only of connective tissue. And so synovial membranes are the last kind of body membrane. They line the cavities of the synovial joints, and they're composed only of a loose connective tissue. So there's a loose connective tissue on the interior, and it produces a fluid that is placed into the synovial cavity. And then on the exterior is a dense, irregular connective tissue that makes a nice, firm covering to the capsule. So the secretory cells that are there in the loose connective tissue, they produce the synovial fluid. It's very thick. It's kind of clear. If it gets cloudy, then that's indication of some problem. And it's super slippery. I'm sorry, I keep hitting that button and I don't mean to. It's super slippery, and it helps to lubricate the movements of the joints. So there you are. 4 different body membranes. Three of them are epithelial membranes: the serous membranes, the mucous membranes, and the cutaneous membrane. And then one of them is a connective tissue only membrane, and that is the synovial membrane. All right, questions? Give me a call, send me an email, see me in office hours.